Okay, so welcome to today's question and answer. We will cover chapter five and six, so great movements in general, and then we go into great movement Earth in particular. And I would like to start with a little summary of the first few chapters that we covered last time. For two reasons, because it'll bring us to what we want to discuss today. And I think it's always good to have these really basic, fundamental concepts available. And I think we can discuss them again and again, and you'll see how they really feed into everything we are doing. Yeah, I don't think there's an end to the understanding of these kind of basic, simple concepts. So, and also we have two questions from last time that we thought are important questions, so we want to cover them as well in this short summary. So we started last time. Chapter one was about the putting the stems and branches, so putting the calendar into context, yeah, and the um, the main kind of subject there was that the calendar acts as an intermediary between heaven and human or humanity. Yeah, so it really kind of translates the energy of heaven into something visible, into something that we can see and feel. And so each time period has is therefore defined, yeah, through a unique character, and also like people born in a certain year or month or day or hour, or certain events happening at the time carry that timestamp. Yeah, they carry that unique kind of character. And that's something that we in constitutional acupuncture work with a lot. It's not the only thing we work with, but that's a really important factor. And in chapter two, we talked about the birth chart, and so especially the year that we are born in. But of course, yeah, we have a look at the month and the day, if available, the hour, but we focus mainly on the year. And at the date of birth or the moment of birth, the jing through the first breath is being activated and into postnatal life. Yes, so that's a really kind of important timestamp and gives really important characteristics. And the Jing is really, so we can look at the Jing as a source of or the root of life. And of course, most of us know that it's a lot to do with our physical incarnation, with our physicality. But also, as Johan wrote in his book, there's already that concept of duality in Jing. Yeah, so there's the history of the family lineage. There's a history of humanity that's being carried through the Jing. But then also there's this concept of purity and unity in the Jing, yeah, that gives us guidance to follow the natural order, yeah, or the order of heaven, the order of or unity. And the same thing is that we have pre and postnatal Jing, and there's also a certain duality. Um, so the prenatal Jing carries the memory of the true self, and then the postnatal Jing is really the accumulation of our life experiences, and we'll come back to that in one of the questions. But one of the questions, then of course, yeah, we have the effect of the birth chart on the Jing. Yeah, so we said that gives like a unique character of how we express ourselves into the world. But then we also have the upbringing, as you mentioned it in your book, Jon. We have life events that happen to us, yeah, especially traumatic events that happen to us, our social environment, cultural environment that play into that. So one of the questions I have is, amongst all these things that define the self, so what is the self? How do you look at the self? Is the self the Jing? Is the self the timestamp that we have? Because if we want to work with and also these different aspects, you mentioned the true self. Yes. So what is a true self opposed to the authentic self? Yeah.
Yeah, it is an understandable question because also in China, the idea of self has changed during the ages. There was a long time that the self, well, I think the best way to describe it, or maybe that's the best way, which is still part of Taoism, is that the self is part of a universal concept. It's part of nature. It's part of the universe and is seen as part of the universe. And in our mind, in our conceptual mind, we try to divide different aspects of the self. But that actually is a bit weird if you think about it, because if we are able to look at ourselves, let's say myself want to be in contact with my true self. So which self looks at the true self or the authentic self or whatever? That is a bit weird because it's all one. It's one consciousness, one self, which can't look at itself. But I think it's important. I have a slide. Maybe we can look at that slide. As this slide. I think that's an important one to understand. I'm starting to understand the idea of self and the Jing. These are all parts of the self, but you can't say this one looks at the other one. It's all self. But how we can talk about it is in these aspects, like temperament and character are two aspects we a lot of times talk about. And temperament is seen as something which is inherited from your ancestors, which is then in the prenatal gene, but it defines your character. It defines the way you act, you talk, your behavior, your movements, and so on. But that is part of our self, which is there beyond the date of birth, beyond the upbringing. It's there all the time. While the character is a postnatal thing, because when you are born, you see like vague pictures of the surrounding, and after a while you bring them together to one whole story, and you start to act and react on what you see and you feel, what you taste, and that builds your character. And that's also part of the self, but that is more stored in the postnatal part, which is in the kidney yin essence. But both influence each other. It's not, they're part of your personality. And then, of course, you have the ego, which is the I am principle, which tries to understand all these vague pictures and make like a nice idea of yourself. Or this is a world I'm in, and this is my position, and this is the world position. And so you start to react and act from your I am principle, and so to build your character. So that's the center of your own human consciousness. We are part of the bigger consciousness, but we also have a human consciousness. And within that human consciousness, we have a contact with the world outside, which we call the horizontal field, you could say. It's on this level, we communicate with each other. And we also communicate with something which is deeper inside ourselves, which you can call the true self or authentic self. But that's more the vertical axis. That is the axis of Shen, Qi, and Jing, and how we react to it in the world and how we act to it to our source. So, as I said, consciousness here is con is together and show is to know. So we know together, which means we know together with the world, or you know together with yourself, which is a bit weird, but it's all yourself. But it says something about sharing. It shares something. So the ego has the choice to be focused much more on society, horizontal field, or much more on the vertical axis, you could say. So that is your connection to your root and to the let's say to the universal spark, which is also inside yourself. And then the awareness of that, and that's a very thought model. It's a concept which is not in reality, it doesn't work. But the awareness of it, as we can talk about it, is the ability to look at it. Who am I? What can I do to be better, to be more lovely, to be angry, to be emotional, to be more thoughtful, whatever. What do I want in this life? That is your identity. And then the true self, that's something which is also something which is theoretical, but it is the connection to your most natural being. So not disturbed by a lot of postnatal issues. So that's why it says the Yuan, Shen, and Zhen are the dual manifestation of the universal spark. So there's the universal spark, which expresses itself as Yuan Shen, which is the original Shen, that is in the heart before birth, and then it separates. Then you get the Wu Shen, the 5 Shen, when you are born. But there is an original Shen, a oneness. And the Zen is the one of the 4 emanations, is the spark, how it's rooted in yourself, the invariable, discriminating, determinating force, which both are on one hand universal and on the other hand are personal. Because the Jing itself, I think that's something we need to understand, that the Jing itself is a personal thing in contact with life as such, in contact with your experiences, and also building your experiences as part of your memory system, but it's not social. The yin aspect, yin essence aspect, is in contact with the environment. In that sense, you can say it's social, but it's mostly personal. And only through Chongmai, which is the bridge between prenatal and postnatal qi, it brings it from the prenatal qi to the postnatal qi. So spleen 4 is an earth point, it's a luo point, it's connected to the blood, connected to the experiences and the reactions to the experiences, like your emotions and your thoughts, and that all the Chongmai, all the experiences are brought into your social behavior, and that's where you build your identity. And so, of course, the yin essence, the kidney yin, builds that also because that's where you store your experiences. And so when you talk about the Jing itself, it's a very personal thing. It takes care of your manifestation, takes care of your bones, it takes care of your brain. It's all, if you damage yourself, it heals it, and your resistance is covered by it, etc., etc. Very personal. But spleen 4, it's called grandfather, grandson. So it comes from the prenatal ancestors to the now, so the postnatal. But that brings the energy from the prenatal, so the kidney yang, also to the kidney yin, and to the postnatal qi of the stomach and the spleen. So the Jing itself is the root of, how do you call it? The root of life, you could say. It's the essence inside you. But the nature of yourself is in the heart. So this brings me to a concept, and I think we spoke about it a few times. I don't know, maybe maybe I say a few things about it. I think Lillian Bridges, Pearl Bridges, she spoke about the golden path. So what is the golden path? The golden path is actually your Ming, what we call destiny. But it's not only destiny, it's also your vital force or your life. Ming Men is the life gate. And so it is different from your inner structure, your inner nature, your inner character, your properties, your quality. That is called Xing. It's a Xing. That is more related to the heart. And you're born with it. So that's part of temperament. And it's your life in it. That's more the character. So Xing is much more in this life, while Ming is life as such. And when you look at the character of Ming, you see two kidneys. And then, for instance, in the classics, they say the life gate, Ming Men, is one time is it's the right kidney, then it is the area between the kidneys, then it's the moving qi between the kidneys, etc., etc. But it's always related to the kidneys. While the Xing is your nature, your character. And when we talk about the Jing, that is your personal root. And so when we talk about destiny, it's how you bring your life as close as possible to your nature. So when we talk about the self deviates from himself by all kind of circumstances. You get survival mechanisms, and the upbringing does a lot with you, and the fear does a lot with you, and shame does a lot with you, and guilt does a lot with you, name it. So you deviate from your original being. And so the destiny, which is related to the Jing and the heart, is bring yourself as close as possible to the nature of yourself, who you are, in contact with the world. While in the past, destiny was something like destiny from heaven. Something happened to you and that was your destiny. But during life, that has changed. Or during the ages, that has changed. So it's much more being close to your nature. And that immediately is heart kidney. Am I clear, or is it too vague?
No, I think it's clear, but the so we work so in that way you talk a lot of the fire water axis, yeah, and but what is the role of the birth chart then in this process? You know, when
Yes. The birth chart is a moment. It's a moment in life where you come in contact with the challenges you face in life. So at a certain moment in that universe, you are born. And then the constellations and the configurations of the energies in your body are placed in a certain way, which means that some are more predominating and other aspects have the tendency to be weaker. And so they need attention, both. Sometimes one aspect is very strong, you need to calm it down a bit. Otherwise, it subdues other aspects. And some parts are weaker, and you need to nourish that. So these are the challenges you face in life. And then you have the combinations of different aspects like stems and branches and divisions, and there are other aspects as well, which together create something that you can say, oh, listen, in this person, the wood aspect is very important, or is predominating, or weaker, or it is falsely nourished, or something like that. So it helps you to understand the challenges people face in life. And so you can't say they should be imbalanced, because when they're completely imbalanced, there is no movement anymore. But they need to come to a certain, how do you call it, reconciliation with their self, which means if they have a lot of metal, why shouldn't you be metallic? But if it's too much, that you harm people or you harm yourself, whatever, that is something which is not easy then for you. So you don't have to harm yourself, but be yourself, not more, not less. That's all you are. That's all you have. So you bring people back to themselves.
So in a way, like the birth chart is one of the first challenges. And by understanding these challenges, we understand where we deviate from our true self.
Yes.
Yeah, and how we can bring it back. So in a way, it works on the vertical axis, on the Shen and the Jing.
On both aspects, actually, because we have a choice. Some people are more focused on in the horizontal field, which is their challenge. Then you can work on the vertical axis, but it's their challenge in this life to come in tune with the horizontal plane. There's nothing
And what
wrong
does that
with
mean to come in tune or have the challenge of the vertical axis, of the horizontal axis?
the horizontal, yeah. You have people, they face constant difficulties. So it means that they probably, if they want to survive, they need to have a good vertical axis. Yeah. But they have to find a way to deal with this difficult world, which is not easy. And of course, they use the vertical axis, but their focus will be also on how do I deal with this? What is possible for me? That's part of their task. I don't say you don't do only this one or the other one. It's part of this life here. Yeah. So only focusing on one doesn't help. We need to combine both aspects. And some people have a very calm vertical axis and they need to come in tune with the world. And some other people have a very calm way of understanding the world, but there's a chaotic inside. And some people, they have both. So that's what you have to discriminate from each other. And so there is no strict way, but it is up to us as practitioners to find the vertical axis, the Shen Qi Jing axis, and the relationship with the world in people in pulse diagnosis, and see if we can not, how do you call it, not help them, but support them. Yeah, that's the good English word. Yeah.
And in terms of then kind of other influences like upbringing and social influence, how can you distinguish between, oh, that's from your upbringing, that's from also traumatic events, no, and do you then use yeah, how do you work with that? Where do you see that where to work on or what aspect to work on and say, oh, this is definitely from a trauma, and then how do you work with that? Also a question that was asked about past events. No,
Yes, yes.
when do we incorporate them in treatment? So the timestamp of past events. When do you not incorporate them? When do you know they're important?
First of all, when you see a birth chart, but we can't talk too much about because we didn't do anything about stems and branches yet. When you see a birth chart, you can see where the weak aspects are. So when people are ill or out of balance in their weak aspects, that's quite easy to balance. But if they don't react to your treatment, then probably something else had happened before. And so then you can look to the past events. Another thing is that when there are traumas, psychological traumas, which are still rooted in the chi of a person, there must be a kind of frozen part somewhere. So there must be somewhere very much cold or stagnation, no movement. That's what you could easily see and feel. You can see it sometimes in the face. You can feel it in the pulse that there is a coldness or tightness or which is not moving at all. And if you can't understand it from the actual circumstances, then probably it is a trauma. And another thing is that when people are damaged, and the first time I found this out was years ago when people were abused as children, sexually abused. You find this often in the bladder and in the heart. They're very weak and unstable. And then you treat them and they react beautifully. Their pulses become beautiful. And then, gosh, what happened? And then they come back next time, everything is again the same. Emptiness, complete emptiness. Then you treat them again. Wonderful. They come back completely the same. Then you can be pretty sure something had happened because they are not able to do it, not able to change that. So it takes a longer time to treat that. So these are examples of how you can find traumas, coldness, frozen, no good reaction of the long term on the treatment, tightness, which is continuous. These kind of things are past events issues. And then if you can fit it in the instability of the birth chart, and you can see, oh gosh, this is their own chi which is harmed, or their weak chi and a tendency to be weaker, that's also a difference. If there are damage in their own chi, it's more dramatic and more intense to treat them.
Okay, okay. Okay, let's move on. I'm sure we come back to these concepts again later. So that was chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 3 and 4 was about 4 emanations and then 5 heavens. So so when you talk about Shen Jing, or even just Jing or Shen in itself, you talk about also concept of duality, and how that kind of indescribable oneness kind of reveals itself, through opposites, so we can understand it with our mind. We can have ideas about it, concepts, and we can learn something from it. So that's the challenge also we have with these different concepts of self. It's just we dissect it here, but in just for understanding, but in reality it is not dissected. Is that right? Or
Well, in reality, as it is, we have two aspects always.
right?
It's part of our human being that there is this duality. And maybe there's a remembrance of oneness inside ourselves. But in this world, as we are in now, there is always this duality. It's part of our world. And maybe people who are enlightened, they can say, oh, there's just one consciousness, which may theoretically be true, that we are all part of the same consciousness. But in the reality of this world, we have this duality of yin and yang. In our psyche, in our mind, in the world, there's always this yin and yang. That is a challenge on one hand. And on the other hand, it is a bliss. Because yin and yang create together. And we often see it as opposition. We know it is, they work together, but often there's a lot of polarity. And in many cultures, but also in people themselves, there is a kind of force which subdues one of them. We are not allowed to be fearful. We are not allowed to shame ourselves. We're not allowed to be angry. We're not allowed to mourn too long. So there's a lot of subdue of one aspect of yin and yang. And so the other aspect helps you to survive in your society. But they do work together. And also in the body, if you look at it, you have the Da Chi and the Gu Chi, the cosmic Chi and the Earth Chi. They come together when you are born. Da Chi and Gu Chi come together and they create the Chi in the channels. That's a creation of two aspects. If you look at the yang of the heart chi, it descends to meet the kidney yin to create tian gui, the menstrual blood, or to get erection. Yeah, so it creates something new. It creates new life, you could say. So yang and yin are always there, but there is the possibility for a third aspect, a renewal of something. And the more you are, how do you say that in English? The more you are in tune with your natural being, the less you deviate from yourself, the more you give chance to the happening of something which is new, is renewed from these two aspects. Yeah, because when we are angry, let's say as a practitioner, something happens and you actually feel anger. Yet you don't be angry with your patient, so you subdue it. And it means that you're not yourself. And it happens that you are suddenly, you grieve because of a patient is there and he's so sad that you feel tears and you don't want to have tears and you want to be strong. You subdue part of yourself. Then
Yeah.
nothing will happen between you and the patient. Nothing new.
Right.
So
So
it doesn't mean that you have to be angry with your patient, but you can say, this makes me really angry. So to communicate with each other, to be true to yourself and to be true with the patient helps something new, helps to that something new can happen. Is that a question?
yeah, there's a question. Let me go into a question that I was asked before. I think you've answered it already, but there was a question of how we can deal with this conflict now with in these turbulent times now when you're pulled either direction and you're always asked to make a decision and to take sides, and sometimes you have to make a decision that goes against your own kind of conviction, your own integrity, and what tools do we have with acupuncture to work with that? When it
Yes, there are
happens.
tools. There are tools. First of all, integrity has to do with earth. To really be in contact with everything and to feel integer, to be whole in yourself. And what you said about there is a world of suffering, of anger, of subduing, all these things, right and wrong, you could say. That is an aspect of matter. But in our life, we have learned that right and wrong is something outside of us. But originally, the value of right and wrong is inside yourself. Benevolence, humanness, which is related to the great movement wood, is something which you share with others. To be a human, to have compassion, to have love for people, to care in a loving way. That is more related to the wood. That's outside of yourself. But right and wrong is metal, is inside. So you can't say you are right or you are wrong. Of course, you can say it, but in the balance of your own self is that you can feel this is not right. You don't have to share it, but to know what is right for yourself and how you behave. So when you behave the same way as other people do, as a reaction to what people do to you, what we see nowadays in the world everywhere, that people are harmed and then they harm other people. And they
Mhm.
claim that they are harmed. And they do the same with other people. That is not the right and wrong I meant in yourself. If you feel that this is wrong, then that's all there is. You don't have to react. You can be in contact with it and feel the emotion about it. And then humanness is the solution. And humanness, I mean compassion. And it's not always easy. I don't say it's easy at all. But the Jing stores love, not being lovely or doing lovely or lovely things, but the love of life. The Jing stores that. It's there for you. And it's expressed by the heart. So when we tune into that, then we are able to do it. But when we tune into the horizontal field and feel the suffering and react to the suffering, then you're not in contact with that. Do you understand?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's not an easy concept. And I'm really in a fortunate position to say these things without being threatened. So I don't know how I would be if I was threatened. But I know from myself also in other areas that it works like that. That reacting on a feeling, this is right or this is wrong, to the outside world is not the righteousness which is meant. That is it's a value which is inside yourself. Yeah.
Okay. There's one question that Andreas asked, and I don't quite understand it. Andreas, maybe you can unmute yourself and ask the question, and we can clarify it.
Oh, okay. Hi, hello everybody.
Hi.
Hi, Andreas.
Thank you for this wonderful meeting. So the question, what I mean by this question, somebody has a specific chart, the birth chart, and there are some balances and imbalances. Okay, for example, the Earth is more strong than other phases and other things going on, or some missing chi and such imbalances. So we're talking that people should be helped to be themselves. Okay, in this helping people to be themselves, can we work on this initial chart by balancing the imbalances or not? I mean, to help them
To come in contact with themselves, you mean?
in contact with themselves and balancing themselves.
Right.
Is it more clear now?
Right.
I think I understand the question, and it's a very good question. Thank you. The idea is that
On one moment, there's also, you can maybe integrate that. There was a question, yeah, how do you do that? Do you do that by to bring somebody into themselves by fire earth balance, fire water balance? You work on the chart. Yeah, practically, how do you work with it to bring somebody?
yeah, that's good. Well, the problem we have at this very moment, well, we didn't discuss any stems yet. So when we talk about great movements, we don't talk about the stems which are involved in balancing the great movement. So when there's an active great movement, you can work on the passive great movement stem and so on. But we didn't study that yet. So we need to stick for now with the great movements.
Okay.
So when the great movement earth is active, then it has a tendency to subdue the great movement water, these kind of things. So when you see that happens, and so let's start in the beginning. So when the great movement earth is active, it has a tendency to subdue the great movement water. It means that when we talk about great movements, it's all water or all earth, because the great movement defines all other cycles. So you can't say, oh gosh, the spleen is reacting, this is great movement earth, so it has to come from the great movement. No, there's need to find earth issues on many more levels, like the stomach, the spleen, but also when you look to the Chinese hourly clock or the branches, you look also to the liver or the small intestine or the pericard, or you look at Tai Yin, which is also earth, or you look at the earth level of the body, which is more the central part of the body, or you look at there is more damp, that's also an earth aspect. And so when we talk about water, we talk about yin yang, you talk about kidney, you talk about there is too much dryness or lack of fluids. You look at the gallbladder, which is also related to the season of winter. You look at hair loss, which is kidney. You look at a certain kind of back pain, which is related to bladder or kidney. Yeah, or you look at issues from the Sanjiao, which is also related to water. Yeah, or you look at Taiyang, which is also water. So there must be more aspects of water when the great movement water is involved. So when the great movement air subdues the great movement water, you find more insufficiencies in water, which could be signs of heat. there's a lack of water down, and there's more heat upwards. So there's more red face, or there is, let's say, back pain or neck pain, which is can be a water issue, but with a red face. So then you can say with a certain behavior, when there's insufficiency of water, there is more tendency to be insecure, to be having a bit more fear, or sometimes shame, or holding back, giving in too much. So what is asked is given. So there's no real own position, own willpower. When you see all these things coming together, you can say, okay, I feel in the pulse, I see also insufficiencies of water. What can you do when there's great movement earth active and there's insufficiency of water? You can work on the great movement water, or you can balance the great movement. And so balancing the great movement has to do with unlike chi of the stems within the great movement. And in this case, it's gallbladder and spleen. But that's another aspect which we didn't discuss. But for the people who studied this before, then of course you will find insufficiencies in spleen. Otherwise, there's not so much access of the great movement earth. Yeah, so then you can work on the unlike chi, for instance.
So for now, like to bring somebody back to their own chi, yeah, to their own. From what we know by now, yeah, you'll work on that first imbalance of the challenges of the chart, the birth chart.
Yes, definitely.
But
yeah.
only if I have signs, if I have conditions that show that the great movement water is insufficient, not in other case.
Yes, not only when you can find it in the pulse and in the face diagnosis and the body diagnosis. If you can find it, you do it.
Okay.
And I think the question is so good because the difference with TCM, I think, is that it's a much more theoretical pattern. You can say, okay, I find great movement earth is active, great movement water is insufficient. It has to be like that, so I will work on it. But you have to check it. You have to feel if it's like that. You have to find it on all levels, and then you can treat accordingly.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's go back. So chapter 3 and 4 was about 4 emanations, 5 heavens. And so the just like you said, no, the calendar is like an intermediary between heaven and earth. So are the 4 emanations. No, they're like 4 aspects of the oneness. So we can understand the oneness here in these 4 different phases. Yeah. And then from there we go to the 5 heavens, and that adds like a central point to it. Now, which you also have in the 4 emanations. Now, when you talk about that, the undivided oneness here comes down one level, which is the earth. No, and then that kind of expresses itself in these 4 emanations. No, and so the earth carries that aspect of oneness, yeah, and so does the aspect of Shen or fire. No, that also carries that oneness.
Definitely, yes, yeah.
And so then we go to these. You give like in your book like these points, these points to activate the power of 5 heavens. No, and they're mostly kind of stomach spleen points. No,
Yes.
set for
Mostly
C7.
spleen. Yeah,
Sorry.
Mostly spleen.
Right. So can you explain to us the why you choose these points, and also, yeah, you talk about these different kind of levels of revelation. No, so 5 heavens is one level of revelation. You have the emanations here, which also have to do then with a great movement. So how to differentiate between them. So when you work on Shen, when you work on great movement, when you work on these 5 heaven points, and what do they address when you use them, or in what instance would you use them?
Not so quickly. Maybe that's one thing which is important to understand when we talk about the 4 emanations and the 5 heavens, where the earth is in the center.
Mm.
The earth is yellow. The splint 4 point is called Gongsun. Yeah, that's also another name, sorry, for the yellow emperor. It's, as I said, splint 4 brings the prenatal chi to the postnatal chi. Yeah, it bridges the energy from the ancestors to the here and now, grandfather, grandson. So the spleen acts like an emperor. The spleen actually is the ambassador of heaven on earth, from heaven on earth, or from the universal spark in ourselves. So the spleen is the ambassador who takes care of all the directions. So heaven reveals itself as earth, and mainly by spleen. So that's one of the reasons I try to discover spleen points, which acts like these 4 emanations.
Right.
And it's not in the classics. It's not at all in the classic. It's really something which I found through experience. And they work when people are not connected with themselves. They are out of balance. So they, like with COVID, for instance, there were a lot of people, they were really, through the COVID crisis and the solitary position they were in, and the fear and all these things, they were really not connected anymore to themselves. They lost their security, they lost their safety, sense of safety, and this, then you can see which emanation is involved. And maybe we can go quickly through them. Let me see. This is hang on. Let me see where I am. Here. These are the points, yeah, the emanation points, you can call them. Spleen 6 I used in the beginning. I don't use that so often anymore. Spleen 12 is a better point, I think. And quickly we go through that, and then we have a short break, I think.
Mm.
So I don't go through everything. That takes so long, but you can read it yourself, and also in the recording you can read it. Chongmen, so it's the rushing gate, it's called. It really works on all the yin, and it has a strong effect on yuan qi. Yuan qi is the qi which connects you to your ancestors, to everything what was before. Yeah. So it opens it to the outside world. Yeah. So when you're completely stuck inside yourself, you don't know what to do anymore, then you don't have this root in yourself anymore. You don't have the ground. There is no anchor. You're lost. And so you're stiff. You're stuck. Then spleen 12 is a very good point to open up the yin to, or the yuan qi, to the outside world. That is the zhen. Yeah, it's really the root inside yourself which helps you to stand on your own feet again. Yeah. The spleen 4, we discussed before, the grandfather, grandson, it really moves it. It brings you further. Yeah, so it is the yuan point. Yeah, the emanation of yuan, which when you are rooted in yourself, you stand on your own feet, and you want to connect to society, then spleen 4 is the point to do that. Yeah. Spleen 20 is a very powerful point. As you can see here, it's a meeting point of prenatal and postnatal chi. Yeah, I often use it together with spleen 4, but be careful, it can be very yang. Yeah, because they're both, it's yuan and hang, so they both are related to yang phases, so you have to be careful. but it brings you back to your origin, to your original state of being. When you were born, you had a certain configuration of energies or chi, and spleen 20 brings you there. That's where you find often when there are lung diseases, that is the vital chi of your body. When that is harmed and it's not from birth, then this brings you back to your original chi and you have the energy to fight that again. Yeah. So when the whole body is exhausted or you are completely overworked or overwhelmed by something, and also I use that point quite a lot in COVID time to when people were quite ill from lung diseases, to bring them back to their original chi. Yeah, so it's a very good point, but it works from the fire aspect, from the hang aspect of the, it's connected to the consciousness of your date of birth, you could say. That's spleen 20. Here it says it is like comforting. It gives you safety, it gives you protection. It's like a mother. When you are born, it's the mother takes care of you. That's what spleen 20 does. Yeah, you are alive, but you need to have safety. That's spleen 20. Spleen 17, I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. No, we forget about that now. Spleen 25 is more related to Li, to the emanation Li. It is in the stomach channel. It is the last gate where you can go from the outside to the inside. It is referred, you can see here the name refers to one of the stars with the Big Dipper, and it directs to the North Pole Star, which is the center of your being. It's the heavenly emperor, which is also inside yourself. It is the heavenly source in your being, so it really connects you to your inner being, and it brings you back to what is called your heavenly mandate, you could say. Yeah, Tianmin. So your heavenly destiny. That is what stomach 25 does. So it means that when you're lost in the world, you don't know anymore, this world is too much. You don't know how to deal with it anymore. You're like chaos. There's no stiffness like with spleen 12, but there is like, you don't know what to do anymore. That is spleen 25. So here you see it's used in yang fullness and yin insufficiency. So you're hypersensitive, you're talking, you're overexcited, there's chaos. That brings you back. It hinges you to your root again. So it brings us inside. It warms, it moves the yin in general, so you can calm down again. Yeah, heavenly pivot, it's called. And spleen 21 is also such a point, which is, we can talk about it for a long time, but also it's the same kind of, it regulates the relationship between the world outside and something inside. Yeah, so I don't want to say too much because the problem is that they always too short to talk about spleen 21. We need more time, but it really balances your whole body. But I would rather choose for stomach 25 first before you use spleen 21. And spleen 15 is also a good point, but it's more from a yin aspect because it's part of the yin wei mai. And especially during a certain period of time, like between puberty and menopause, that's really a good point to treat and have the same kind of effects on the body as stomach 25. It brings us inside. You connect yourself to the inside, but less than stomach 25. CV17, that's the heavenly point related to the Zhongqi. It works like the earth itself. It really balances all the movements and it balances your position on the horizontal field with your vertical axis. But you hardly ever needle it. It's better to give moxa on it. It's more safe to do moxa on it. It's easy too much if you needle it. Not on the short term, but on the long term, it gives a lot of movement and you don't want that. Yeah, it's a very strong point. But it brings you back to your own authenticity in the world. So on that corner of horizontal field and vertical axis, that's what CV17 does. So besides CV17 and stomach 25, they're all spleen points. They're all related to that spleen aspect that is the ambassador of heaven on earth.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Jon. So basically what you're saying is that these points bring you back to the self. Yeah, hence like spleen and the concept of earth and fire, yeah, or
Yes.
heaven, how that comes down. And they all do it in a certain way. So one focuses more on wood, yeah, so the acceleration into the world, and one focuses more to bring the energy inside, but the root of it is the self.
Yes, it is it really, you're not connected to yourself anymore.
Right.
That's what it is. That's why the emanations and the five heavens are so important, because the root of your being is the five heavens and five Shen. And so when you're not connected to the five Shen, or it's chaotic, then these points are very helpful to bring people back to themselves. And even after an acute trauma, for instance, when people come from an accident or name it, just an actual trauma, then you can use these points as well to bring them back to themselves. The only thing you have to do as a practitioner to feel the pulse and see, gosh, this is a really chaotic point. What is missing here? Is there missing the aspect of Li, which is going inside and looking at the self? Or is the movement outside? Or is the comforting, which is the mother? Or is they don't have any root anymore? The Jing is completely gone. They don't stand on their own feet anymore. And that goes together with yin insufficiency or yang not moving or chaotic qi in the fire, anything like that. You will find it.
But you will also take into consideration the birth chart.
Definitely. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, because if people are born spleen in earth, this is more difficult.
Right, but also let's say somebody has great movement earth active and water passive, then you would kind of maybe look into either, you try to understand it in relation to the birth chart.
Always yeah, thank you. Yeah, always in relation to the birth chart. And it means that maybe that's not the only point you use. Like when people are born active, great movement, you can maybe do spleen 12, but maybe you have to add something to strengthen the great movement water.
Right. Okay. Good. I think we'll take, it's 4:03 now. We'll take 10-minute break. So we'll come.
Yeah, let's do a bit shorter though, so we can start in 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah. So we'll come back in 10 minutes and yeah, we'll take a short break then.
Thank you.
Good. So already we kind of you emphasized the importance of earth, yeah, and also that strong connection to I don't know, fire or heart Shen, yeah, as both being the ambassador of heaven on earth and ruler of the self. Yeah. I think there was just one technical question. I think it's a technical question, but we can also go into a bit of detail. So when from the five heavens, now we go into that picture of the five elements as most of us know it, yeah, as a cycle. The earth steps between the yang kind of aspects, which is wood and fire. Then we have the earth, and then we have the yin aspects of metal and water. Yeah, so maybe that also gives us more understanding about the earth, and then later on how to treat it. Why is it there and not between yin and yang? Yeah, between wood and fire.
Wood and fire are both yang.
Sorry?
Wood and fire are both yang.
Yeah, but why is it between wood and between fire and metal,
Yes.
and not between water and wood? Which is also a transition
Water and
from.
wood, you mean. Yeah, but between that yin and yang. Yeah. Understand. Yeah. The earth itself is the heavenly picture of earth is earth in the center, and you have fire in on top, water down, and then you have wood and metal. That is the picture of heaven, how the earth is the center between all these four and is in connection with these four. It is like heaven is more on a more manifested level, where it contacts with the four directions. That is the heaven aspect. On the man aspect, it starts with the earth. And from the earth, you go inside. It's what I said when you are born. You have your temperament from your father and your mother, from your ancestors. And then you start to see the world. You don't see it. Your eyes don't work. You see light and dark. You see, you smell maybe something. You taste maybe something. And it's very vague. And you try to combine all these things to make a kind of concept out of it. So that builds your identity. And then you go inside. You bring it. You digest the world. You digest the world. That is more the metal aspect, and then it goes to your jing. And from your jing, you start to grow. That is where growth starts. That's the wood aspect and the fire aspect, and then it continues. It means that every time in your development you are confronted with the earth aspect, it's with identity issues, with who am I in this world? What is happening here? How can I adapt to this world? How do I transform to be able to deal with this world? Every time you think like, gosh, this world is so much suffering, I can't deal with it. That's an identity problem. That's an earth problem. And of course, the heart is involved as well, because it's also your emotions, also your intimate relationship with the world. That's from the heart. And as I said, as you said, the earth is the landing place for heaven, but the spirit is the landing place for the spirit is the heart. So, and the landing place for love is the jing. So there are several aspects in the body where heaven reveals itself, partly through the jing, which is more physical, partly through the Shen, which is more, let's call it spiritual, more subtle, and partly through the earth, which is in relationship with the world, with society. They are all aspects of heaven. And the idea of the great movement earth as the first energy is the beginning of who you are, the beginning of identity, of being aware of who you are. And then it brings it to you, to the water, your true self. This is who you are with your temperament. And from there on, you start to communicate with the world. And then when there is fire and there's flourishing and you know how to deal with the world, again, you are confronted, who am I in this world?
Right.
And then you start to react, or maybe you get fits of anger or anything like that. But that's how it develops. Yeah.
Okay, so there's this really, really important connection on the heaven level, the earth being also the ambassador of heaven on earth, but also how the energy goes inside and we're kind of make contact or are confronted with the self, and how we digest everything and make it part of us. So a strong connection between fire and earth. Fire and great movement earth. And you also mention it in your book. That's when you talk about great movement earth, that's the connection you emphasize is fire and earth. Can you give again, more practical examples, how you work on that balance, what it means to be disconnected, or when there's a disconnection from fire and earth, where do Shen and Yi play into that? What does it mean to have insufficient Yi or stagnant Yi or so all these.
It's a huge question. That's a huge question. Let me start with the Shen and the fire. First of all, when the earth, your identity, is out of balance, or there's chaotic, or there is weakness, or something like that. The earth,
the inability to look at yourself. That is what you mean with identity.
Yes, yes. So but not only to look at yourself, also when you feel like lost, that there is a lot of work issues, and you're just overwhelmed by it. And is this the right job for me? Or you are in a family, or you're married and you don't know how to deal with your marriage, or your children behave in a certain way. Gosh, how am I going to deal with all these things? Name it. Yeah, that you're lost in yourself. So that is the great movement earth. Is then, you could say, the identity is harmed. That, first of all, is also related to your vertebral column. Your vertebral column is part of your earth vertical axis. So you find back pains, you find deviations in the vertebral column. You can find digestive issues. That's also to the great movement earth. You could find even find issues, let's say here in the eyes, that this is red. That is also related to the great movement earth. You can find taste problems, many things which is related to the earth. And that goes together with that feeling of lost, overwhelmed, no strong identity, no backbone anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to treat that without treating the Shen or the fire, you won't succeed. The fire needs to be treated before you can treat that identity issue, or that vertebral column issue, or even eczema. When the world is too heavy for you, you can create eczema as a defense mechanism against the world. You need to balance the fire first. And so it means that you need to find points which balance the Shen. And so you need to look at what is Shen actually, and how do you deal with that? We can go into the Shen if you like, but it is also the relationship between the heart and the pericard. Like the pericard is your aura, is your defense mechanism, is the original heart, you could say. And in that there is a void, which is the heart and the Shen. The heart is an organ, is much more the pericard. But within that there is a void which we call heart. So when the heart constrict is very, very tight and excessive, it's a defense mechanism against the insufficiency of the heart. So when you find that, you don't calm down the pericard, but you strengthen the heart with heart points, or with back shu points for the heart, or renmai points, which are more suitable when you want to give more comfort of the heart. And so you build the heart energy so that finally the pericard can calm down. Or when people are in contact with the world constantly, they are a teacher. And a lot of students, they behave badly and you don't feel safe anymore. That is from one person to many other person. That is more related to the Sanjiao, for instance. So it means that there is a Sanjiao heart insufficiency. The Sanjiao is let's say the earth fire. Pericard and Sanjiao are part of the earth fire. Heart relates to the heavenly fire. So there is an imbalance again between heaven and earth, but now to the Sanjiao. So when the Sanjiao is out of balance, you can treat the Sanjiao, but also, for instance, if you think about branches, the spleen or the Chinese hourly clock, which is the opposite. And later in my book, you can see that also lung and bladder channels are available to treat in these cases. So you have to find in the pulse, how do I balance this Sanjiao that it calms down, and so the heart can finally breathe again. Yeah, so there is always, you have to find within the fire what is out of balance in relationship to the birth chart. So when somebody is born heart in the wood, for instance, so with the great movement wood, that is much more severe if there is a Shen issue than when somebody is born, let's say, with great movement wood.
Ladder,
Huh?
ladder and wood,
Bladder wood or great movement wood active,
right.
that easily subdues the great movement earth. So these people have the tendency to be weaker in the great movement earth. That's easier to treat. But then you first start with treating the Shen and the heart. And the Shen has two aspects. One aspect is that it is in connection with the Yuan Shen, with the origin. That's the vertical aspect of the Shen. And one aspect is in contact with the world. It receives all the information through your sense organs, the ears, the eyes, the mouth, and it all goes to the heart. And it is imbued by it and acts on it in relationship to the vertical axis, but also in relationship to what the world needs and how it's taken care of. And you can be intimate with the world also from your heart. Yeah. So if that is disturbed, that all is disturbed, it's very difficult to create a balanced identity. That's why the Chinese book often say all diseases start with the heart.
So in the 5 heaven points, you mentioned that word kind of safety, feeling safe with fire or heng. Yes, so you have to, by treating the fire, you will make somebody feel safe in themselves and feel safe in the world. And then you can move. That is an important aspect of the earth before you can go into the earth.
Well, nowadays there's a lot about the vagus nerve. You remember? There's a lot of treatment possibilities with the vagus and the ventral vagus. One of the treatment for the ventral vagus, which gives safety, is this. This gives you a feeling of safety. That's the heart. Yeah, that really gives safety to the heart. Yeah, this feeling. Also, when people are sad, they do this. Oh no, that they give this. They bring themselves into safety, a feeling of safety. That is the safety of the heart.
Right.
That's where it begins. Yeah, and so, yeah, you need to feel that relative feeling of safety.
Okay. And what does it mean to have a stagnant earth or an insufficient earth or because they all require different treatment in my understanding, you know? So there's also a question. So if we go into Shen and Yi, yeah, the treatment of the help me, bladder 49.
Bladder 49 it is.
49, yeah, the outer point of the spleen back shoe point. How to treat that in regards to the Yi? What does it mean if the Yi is overactive, if it's insufficient?
Let me first go to the Yi. Let me see. This is no, is it this one? Yeah, 78. Yeah, when you see this picture, the great movement earth is the landing place for heaven between yang and yin, Yi, intent, and purpose. When you see this picture, this Chinese character for Yi, you see below the lowest part of that character is the heart, and above it is a sound. So it is singing your harmony, as I say here. So it means that, and that is the difficulty with intent and purpose and destiny, that is all within time. We have a purpose in the future. We have an intent in the future. We have a destiny in the future. We think about it. It is a thought model to bring it into the future. A structure, an idea, whatever you can think of. It is a manifestation we desire in the future. That is how it is often used. But maybe you remember what we said in the beginning when we discussed this. We said the destiny is related to the kidneys, but destiny is that you come in tune with your nature. That is in the now. It's not in the future. So ye intent, the word intent is a very strange translation because it says something like, we want to go there. It's something new. And my picture is blurry, it says. So it happens sometimes when I come too close to, then I'll do it. So now it's okay again, hopefully. It means that the intent is not a real good translation. Intent is listening to the heart. It's listening to your nature, to your Shen. It's close to your nature to act accordingly. So when that is the ye becomes stagnant or insufficient, it is not able to listen anymore to your nature. Yeah, so it means that your memory is disturbed, your concentration is disturbed. There is no feeling of how do you call it, purpose. But the purpose not as I want to be that or I want to do that, but you feel lost inside yourself. Yeah, it's like stuck inside yourself. That can be caused by stagnation of earth or great movement earth or yi, can be because of insufficiency. But when there is insufficiency, immediately there is also stuckness. The great movement earth also acts with dampness. That earth is also dampness, also in the great movement earth. So if there is too much dampness, fullness of dampness, it's stuck. If there's empty dampness, there's no transformation possible, it's stuck. So they're all more or less the same. If they're within that realm of the amount of dampness, if there's too lack or there's too much, the result is the same. There's stuckness. Only when there's excess, usually you find more a center of stuckness. And when there's emptiness, it's kind of when you feel the pulse, it's very weak and yielding, and you don't have any structure, no substance anymore. But the result is that there is the stuckness in yi, and so you can't process anymore. You're not able to process things, and you're not able to listen to your own nature. You listen to the world outside. It means that when you look at people, to my glasses on, they don't look at you like this, but they look like this. They always look a different direction because they're more or less like, where am I? They're not able to look you in the eyes. And that is because of an insufficiency or an excess or a stagnation of yi, because they are lost themselves inside themselves. It's part of the great movement earth. It's part of identity. It's part of having a backbone and things like that. And in that sense, bladder 49 is a good point to treat. But I need to say a few things. Sometimes the earth or the yi is affected by what you can call wind. So if there is a lot of emotion of other people, like anger, that's also a kind of wind coming to you. Or when there is real wind issues, then you can sedate that point. And not like the normal sedation, but there is too much yang going on. Then you needle the point, you click against the needle, and then you take it out. So it's a very short treatment. So where there's too much yang, then you need to sedate it. So you needle the point, you needle, you click against it, you take it out, and you close the point.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, when there is insufficiency and people really feel insufficient in their earth, so their backbone is like they look downwards and everything is insufficient, then you can easily give moxa on it, for instance, to help them to create more strength in that area, and then you can strengthen it in that way.
Okay, okay. So that in a way also explains a little bit like the difference between active and passive great movement earth. Yeah, so the active great movement earth is what gives you this inner purpose. Is that right? That is being expressed.
Yes, that is true. That is in a purpose, but it is.
Or can you tell us what is the difference between active and passive great movement earth?
Yes, the active great movement earth, there's initial power. There is the desire, there's the wanting, there is the movement of in connection with everything. So there is this stability, the cry for stability, but not further than that. Because after, when you imagine the child who get all these pictures of light and darkness and food and smells and coming to you, it needs to create something out of it. That's great movement earth. What do I do with that?
What great movement earth, active or passive?
Active.
Right.
But the great movement passive is that it is open. It allows itself, it allows himself, herself to get it in, to feel, to be able to sense, to be able to be open to the world, to feel the care of people, to receive. That's more the passive part of it. So one get the center from doing, and the other get the center of receiving. And both are needed. Both are needed for everybody. So when you're born with great movement earth active, you are more a doer, more finding stability, more being the center, taking care of things, etc., etc. But you need to understand that inside yourself and to be able to receive before doing. Yeah. And the other ones, they need to learn how to do things.
Mm.
Their challenge. Yeah. So neither one is good or bad. They're both okay, but there need to be a certain kind of balance. But when you are born active, so when you only receive, you don't stand on your position, that is a weakness then. That's
Right.
not your nature. The nature is that you have the ability to stand in a certain position. And in that position, you need to learn to listen, for instance, or to see, to watch.
Okay. Do you remember the case history you give with Great Movement Earth about Mrs. A, and she's very much kind of listening to what everybody else wants, you know, what her employer wants, what her children need, what
Yeah.
and she comes with you, and you said by working on the Great Movement Earth, no, she got better. No,
Yes.
can you go a bit more into more concrete example? So that she's more yin earth, as you describe it. No, she's more open to the needs and desires of everybody else.
Yes. Yes. So
But she's not so much in contact with her own needs and
no,
desires.
but then you need to look at this chart, because otherwise we can't discuss it. When this is the chart of stems and branches, and here you see the great movement earth, and here you see the great movement earth. You see my cursor? Yeah.
Yeah.
This is great movement earth. This is great movement earth. This is the great movement passive, chi. This is the great movement active, the heavenly stem, chia. So this goes to the organ of spleen. This goes to the organ of gallbladder. Yeah. So when you want to balance the great movement earth, there are two possibilities, or more possibilities, but two main possibilities. is work on the unlike chi. They are unlike. They're both within the great movement Earth. So when she is born spleen in Earth, you can work on gallbladder points, or the other way around. But in this case, it's working on gallbladder points. Or you work on like chi, which is stomach. Yeah, stomach and spleen are like chi. They're not in the same great movement, but they are alike. Yeah? So like chi and unlike chi are two possibilities to work on the great movement Earth. But on the other hand, it's not only through acupuncture. It's also when people are born with spleen in Earth, as I said, they have the tendency to be open to the world and to give into the demands of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So my question itself, did you ever think about what is your own opinion? That already is a treatment. That already says, gallbladder in Earth. I have a position. I have something to say. That's gallbladder in Earth. So the question itself was already a treatment. And when I never thought about it, then you can continue working on that. And then there are points which, for instance, I discussed somewhere else in the book, like gallbladder 34, which is the stem point, which helps you to find this position inside yourself. But also small intestine 4 does that. Yeah. And in some other cases, for instance, if these people have breathing problems, but this lady didn't, like CV22 also strengthens the spleen, not only in receiving, but also in breathing in and out. So it helps you to be able to breathe in and to breathe out, to communicate with the world. Yeah. And so there are lots of possibilities to work on the great movement Earth passive, even not using stem points, but also, as I said, for instance, CV22 is in this case a good point to help her with her spleen energy to be in contact with the world, that she has her own things to say. But then you need to find suffocating problems before you do that. Otherwise, there's no reason to do that.
Okay. I think that helps a lot to understand this concept of Earth and the yin and the yang aspect of it. If we go into a bit more into, like this year is Great Movement Earth active. Yeah, so it's a gallbladder Earth year that started. And can you explain what you, so knowing that, what would you expect in that year, and how can you kind of work preventatively? As you said, stem cell branch is also a way to prevent illness. And who would be most affected in a gallbladder Earth year constitutionally, only from the great movement aspect? What would you expect? Who would suffer the most from it, or where you would be more alert, to actually say, I need to balance that? And how do you balance then, or work preventatively? Is that with gallbladder 34 and spleen 3, or?
The question itself is a bit tricky because there is no average in this. Because everyone has his own life and his own freedom and his own choices he makes in life. But if he put it in a time concept, the last few years, but I don't want to explain that in the stems and branches chart now, but I have discussed it somewhere else before, where years where there was a challenge on water, and especially on fear. And then it depends on how we are attuned to our own vertical axis. Because fear is the most primal emotion there is. And the last few years, since COVID actually, we went through, all over the world, we went through periods of fear, very much so. And from fear, there is usually a survival reaction. And so it depends on that person with that configuration of stems and branches, how he or she reacts. So you can't say there's an average idea. But the only everything which there is that the last few years, there's an issue of fear and the reaction on fear. The Great Movement Earth Active subdues the Great Movement Wood, has a tendency to subdue the Great Movement Water. Yeah, so Earth subdues the Great Movement Water. It means that in these years, there is a tendency, there is more insecurity, more fear, less Jing, less root. So if you have that in your chart, or if you have that in your upbringing because of trauma, or if you have that from your ancestors because there is a lack of Jing in your being, then you are more vulnerable in these years. It doesn't mean that something will happen to you, because if you live your life accordingly, you can have a very happy life. But if you exhaust your Jing or exhaust your water, especially when fear is involved, then you are more vulnerable to the issues coming up this year, because there will be issues of identity against fear. What am I doing in this world? How do I live my life in this world? I can't stand this anger or this whatever there is, which is very difficult at the moment, because there's always a lot of suffering, but it's more apparent, it's more open in the world now. And so it will affect all of us. And so then again, it's important to understand what fear actually is. And living to your destiny, maybe that's good to say, is that the Zi, one of the 5 spiritual sources, you have the Yi and you have the Zi, they're very close together. The Zi, the character of Zi on the lower part is also the heart, but then it's straight up. There's a kind of straight up energy, like a tree going up. Like with the Yi, it's a musical sound, but with the Zi, it's straight up. So being true to your own nature, if you're true to your own nature, that's wisdom. Wisdom gives the direction to love. So if you're true to your own nature, you're true to your Jing, you're true to your love, which is stored in the Jing, and you can express it through the heart when you're true to yourself. So when you're true to your own nature, you make contact with that heart. So the destiny and Jing are then connected to each other. So, and then when you think about the fear, or you completely chaotic, it's the Yi which is chaotic. It's the Great Movement Earth which is chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
So most important is to bring you back to your own nature, and that is related to the heart and the Jing. So the Shen and the Jing and the Zhen. So to work on that vertical axis will help people to get more true to themselves. And when you're an angry person because of your temperament, then you're an angry person. And when you're a soft person, or you always give in because of that temperament, or maybe because of your configuration with your birth chart, you are like that. But it makes it easier for yourself to be like that than giving in what is expected from you. Yeah. So it's not easy always, but I think that's what we as practitioners can do. And then it is the ability to diagnose what is going on. If it is an acute thing, it's often different from a chronic thing. So when people have chronic back pain, it is up to us to find which chi is involved here. Is it the Great Movement Earth? Is it because of the weakness of the Great Movement Water? Can be both. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And then treat accordingly. Not through a concept, but as a help to understand what is going on in that person.
Okay. So that's Great Movement Earth and Water passive. Yeah, it's about your identity in the world, how we can stand upright and move forwards. Yeah, and it's easily based on fear or disturbed by fear.
Yes. Definitely. That's this year. That's this
Right.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And you will see people coming up with a lot of identity force. They like to subdue people. They like to overwhelm the yin with a yang quality. Yeah, that is they themselves have a lot of identity issues probably, but they project that they project that to the world, and they want to build their power onto other people. That's how identity is strong now, overwhelming other people.
So in terms of preventative treatment, you look strongly into water energy and heart or fire energy. Yeah, to really.
Yeah, but especially to find a way to connect to your true nature.
Mm.
I think that is very important this year. That destiny is not something you want to desire or you desire in the future. But destiny is happening now to be on your path, which it belongs to yourself, which is your free choice. Nobody can take that from you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you put something in the future, people can take that away. But to be true to your nature, nobody can take that from you.
Okay. So so that also along these lines, so short-term, long-term solution about Great Movement Earth. So short-term solution would be to emphasize your identity, to force your identity into the world, to kind of be very forceful with it.
Yes.
And long-term solution would be to, what would be the long-term solution?
The long-term solution for water is.
So here you would work on long-term solution water then.
Yes, definitely.
Right.
Definitely. Well, you can find this in the book. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's very important to find a long-term solution for water, especially this year.
Right. Okay. Good.
Maybe we should go in host and guest movements.
10 minutes left. Yeah, let's go into guest and host movement. Yeah. First of all, I think there was the desire. Can you show that in the chart, how we find guest and host movement and the relationship? Sometimes easier to see than to read about it.
Yeah. This is the chart. Here you find the great movements. This is the level of the great movements. And here you find the host movements. This is wood, which is spring. This is fire, this is summer. Earth is late summer, metal is autumn, and water is the winter. And it starts all over again. This is host because it's every year it's the same. Every year this is the same. Yeah. But this springtime, this wood host movement is influenced by the effect of the great movement Earth. Oh, I'm gone now suddenly. What happened? You still see me?
I see your little picture on the side, but your screen is gone.
Yes, I don't see anything anymore. What happened? Yes, I'm back again. I don't know what I did. Do you see me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see your screen. And now it's gone again.
Hang on.
Now I see you again in just pretty.
Yeah, and I'll try to take the screen again. Okay, we'll leave it like this then. You can see me? This is Great Movement Earth.
Right, yeah.
Now here we have the host movements. This Great Movement Earth creates the guest movements. You can find them here. I need to make it bigger. Sorry for that. Hope it goes well. No, it doesn't do it. I don't know what's going on with my computer.
So on that lower line, we see the sequence of the host movement, which is always the same. It starts with wood, fire, earth, metal, water.
Again, it's gone. Sorry. Try once again. Maybe a bigger picture. No. Okay, I'll take this one again. So we have to do it like this. Sorry for that. Here you see the earth on top, then metal, water, wood, fire. So it starts, the first period starts with earth. Here in the next year, it starts with metal. The next year, it starts with water. Last year here, it starts with fire. So these are the guest movements. They work on the host movement. So the first period is the earth acts on wood. So it means that the earth is unfavorable, destroy from earth to wood. It tries to conquer it. So there is a destroying element from earth to wood. It means that the springtime is a kind of subdued. So there will be springtime, but it has to fight against something. Yeah. An unfavorable destroying relationship is a kind of chaotic relationship in which the development of the springtime needs to fight against it, but it becomes stronger. It's like when plants go through the earth, they find the light and they go through the earth, through the how do you call it, the disturbance, the solidity of earth, to still fight through it, come to the light. So it helps them to become stronger. Yeah, that is what you find in this relationship, and that happens this whole year. So when you go to the other slide, let me hang on. I think it's this one. For some reason, I don't see my slides anymore.
Yeah, we don't see them either. It's black.
I don't know what happens. Okay, I'll do it by heart then. That what you see is that this whole year there is this unfavorable destroyer relationship. It means that the earth, which is from the great movement, which is the most central energy there is, it influences the host movement. So the host movement of spring will come on, likes to come, but there is earth subduing it. So if the springtime comes, it needs to fight for it. So probably we find a lot of rain, for instance, or we suddenly find coldness, or we find other things that disturb the normal evolution of springtime. But that's also inside us. So there will be quite hectic events which can disturb us, but we need to be strong inside ourselves. We need to, as I said before, true to ourselves, find your own nature, who you are, because there is your strength, not in what somebody else wants you to do. So even with patients, when they come to you, and also to me, is when they are born, let's say with metal very strong, wood is very passive. Yeah, so they are strong in their metal, and they need to strengthen their wood, the ability to adapt, the ability to feel free. That's not easy for them, but so they have to focus on that. And so when they are too strong, too harsh for themselves, which is also metal, they are too focused, they are too fighty, they want to fight everything, and instead they subdue the wood even more. They are not true to themselves. Yeah. So the truth is that when there's a lot of metal, then there's need for attention to wood. So for these people, it's important to, especially when there is this earth fighting wood, is to focus on that. What does wood mean? It's not only anger. It's also sharing love. It's also compassion. It's also humanness, benevolence. It's also free flow of chi. It's also how do you call it? Cleansing the body. That's all related to wood. That's important for these people to develop, for instance. Yeah, so true to the self, find the challenges and focus on that.
Okay. Okay. So so it's a gallbladder and earth here, as you said before. Now there's this challenge of uh, finding your own identity and be with that in the world. Yeah. But by the very relationship between great movement, guest movement, host movement, so that's already challenged by the water. And on top of that, you have the challenge of earth and wood.
Definitely, especially in springtime where we are now.
Right. Okay.
Especially in this time. In this time, many people challenge the emotions of what am I doing in this world? There's so much resistance. So when people are emotional, they easily find something like, this is too much. This world is too vigorous. What happens to me now, I feel lost. That is quite normal in springtime where we are in now. But that's what we see now often. And that has to do with that great movement of water, which is fear, which is subdued, where there's no place to find wisdom. And maybe another time we need to talk about why wisdom is related to fear. But upon that, there is this unfavorable, destroying relationship between the earth and the wood. So it's fighting against windmills, it seems. So where am I? And then you need to find with your patient, as we started, is it we need to strengthen the vertical axis, the hard-fire axis, or do we balance the horizontal field, the way we deal with ourselves, the way we are in connection with society? And that's much more on the wood metal quality, right? Hard and water is much more the vertical axis, but the metal wood quality, how do I deal with my own anger? How do I deal with anger of other people? How do I deal with my self-knowledge? How do I deal with the cruelty of people, etc., etc.? That's much more wood metal. And you find wood metal issues in the body. That could also be back pain, but it could also be digestive issues. That could be lung problems. It can be anything, even foot issues or hand issues or face issues. They can also be wood metal issues. But then we have to go in lots of pathologies. But that's hopefully is more well known to people at this moment. But then it has to do with this social activity, and then you have to balance that within the birth chart.
Yeah, it's 6 o'clock so, but maybe we have a few more minutes. Yeah, when we talk, because there'll be different relationships where, but guest and host movement, yeah, is related to the 5 heavens. Yeah, and I think at least in the past you called it it's a very deep aspect of ourselves. Yes, so these struggles or these challenges now will feel very deep connected to the self or
the host and guest movements are different from host and guest energies. Maybe we once will discuss that, or the relationship between Tu Tien and the great movement. But the host and guest movements are described in the classics with climates only.
right.
And what I discovered is that it is also working within people on an emotional level, especially on the emotional level, not so much on the physical level. It's mostly emotional, mostly blood. That's why, for instance, now it's very good to treat people with lure points. Like when people are really lost, you can treat points like gallbladder 37, liver 5, or stomach 40 and spleen 4, or to balance through both lure points to balance that element. Because that is balancing also the emotional level. So when there is, for instance, herpes zoster, which is related to stomach and gallbladder, it's very good to treat these lure points if it is originated from this emotional disturbance, not as a treatment principle always to treat herpes zoster, but herpes zoster is a disease where there's an overwhelming quality from somewhere on the nervous system. And then you get herpes zoster complaints. It's always emotional. The background is always emotional. Then you have to find, is it more in the wood? Is it more in earth? Or is it more in fire? And then one of the first principles could be balance that phase by using the lure points, because these balance the emotions.
Okay, so if I repeat that, so what you said is the relationship guest movement, host movement in our cells will express itself or will affect our emotions, and
Definitely.
will right. I think that's all we have. I mean, there were questions about the different relationships. This one was a reverse curse cycle relationship. Yeah, and I'm sure as we go through the great movements, we can talk about curse cycle relationship, so favorable destroyer. So we won't do that today, otherwise we'll have to rush it.
Yeah, I don't want to rush it now, but
yeah,
yeah, we
there's
can go.
one question for you, Jon, by Amanda, and the question was about the great movements, guest and host movement relationship in the Southern Hemisphere, and also on the equator. And that
Well,
will
we
finish.
need a
We'll
bit more
finish with
time,
that,
but
Jon.
yeah, the Southern Hemisphere, the system is the same.
So it follows the seasons.
Sorry?
It follows the seasons.
It follows the seasons, but the seasons in the Southern Hemisphere are different from the Northern Hemisphere. And the Chinese found this by observation, and so we are more or less on the same level related to the equator, and so it's more or less the same as in China as in Europe, for instance. But like when you are in the north of Europe, like in Finland or in Sweden or Iceland, the springtime is less long than here. So you have to adapt these to the situation where you are, as it is in the Southern Hemisphere. If you are in the south of New Zealand, it's very different from the north of Australia, because then you are already much closer to the equator. So you have to translate that more or less to what's happening there. Yeah.
Okay. Amanda, I'm not quite sure whether I understand your question. The host changes in the Southern Hemisphere. Can you come on?
No, that's fine. I think Johan's answered. Just because I was born in Kenya, which is kind of on the equator. So, yeah, I mean, it's a perennial question that that comes up all the time. But yeah, no, that's great.
But it was answered, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, it's difficult. The equator itself, it's a difficult area of the world, because there the seasons are even more different. But as long as it's in the Northern Hemisphere, then it's the same as the chart as we have it. Yeah.
Good. Okay, let's
Are there
finish.
more questions, or people want to say something?
Yeah, let's open that up. I'm sorry I haven't done that after the break or in between. Is there anything that you have questions about today, and anything you want to add or ask or say? Anybody? If you do, then just come online and
Just to finish speaking, I just want to say I loved reading your chapter on the earth. It just was so beautiful. And so thank you. It really evoked.
Thank you.
Yeah, for that.
Thank you so much.
okay.
So shall we close?
Yeah, I'll stop the recording then.
Yes. Well, I think I speak on behalf